I'm Josh, and I'm going to show you the process of building this Zimmerman's high tunnel. So this is a 34-foot wide high tunnel by 65 feet long. We have 6-foot sidewalls and 5-foot arch spacing. Also, this high tunnel has the W truss, 5 rows of purlins, and metal hip and baseboards. We also have a double layer roof with the inflation fan and 24-inch intake and exhaust fans that run off a thermostat to keep the high tunnel cool. On the far side, I have a wooden end wall with 2 4x8 swinging doors. And up on this end, we have a polycarbonate end wall with the metal framing and 2 4x8 sliding doors that meet in the middle. So previously I made some videos constructing a more basic high tunnel kit from Zimmerman's. There's lots of useful information in those too, but this series is covering more of the options that Zimmerman's offer. So let's get started building. So now we'll move on to installing our hip boards. This high tunnel has metal hip and baseboards, and they're relatively easy to install. So we're going to attach the hip boards about 1 inch up from this splice. So if your splices are in line and straight, you can go off of that and your hip boards will be straight also. If they're not that accurate, you can run a string and use that to keep your hip board straight. So we'll start on one end of the high tunnel and we'll attach the hip board with one 4.5 by 3/8 inch carriage bolt. So this bolt will be centered on the hip board, and I like to pre-drill the hole. You're going to want to get a high quality drill bit such as a Cobalt for drilling these holes. Didn't work that good. We're going to install this hip board so that the end is straight or in line with your end wall. Once again, keeping it about 1 inch up from this splice. Then we're going to finish drilling this hole the rest of the way through. So I like to drill this hole through the hip board slightly larger so that the shoulder of the carriage bolt seats in there better. You can use a little bit larger drill bit, or you can just kind of ream it out with the 3/8 bit also, whichever works better for you. Also, before I put this bolt in, I like to make a bushing out of leftover purlin scraps, just so that the hip board doesn't crush when you tighten up this bolt here. And then, just for extra stability, I like to wrap these ends around and we'll put Tek screws in here. That way these ends aren't sharp on your plastic and they hold the end in place better. So now we'll fasten the hip board onto the sidewall posts with 2 clamps, the same as the wood hip and baseboards, only instead of leg bolts, we're using Tek screws on here. Once again, it works best to kind of tighten them evenly. I'm going to be careful not to over tighten these. Splicing these metal boards is pretty simple. We're just going to use the 1-foot hip board splicers. Those slide in and you just want to get it about in the center. And if we don't want it to move too much while we're drilling, we can clamp it just a little bit. And then we're going to put 2 Tek screws on top and 2 on the bottom. Same over here once we put this side on. We can start with just 2 for now. And we can slide on our next hip board. And once again, if you have these type of clamps and you want to keep everything nice and straight, we can clamp it together. And then we'll put the rest of the Tek screws in. So when the splice is finished, it should look like this. We don't want any screws on the top or the outside where your curtain and other things are going to go. Also, you may find this easier to put the first piece of the splice together before you put the hip board up. And here's where you can see that it's important to keep these Tek screws low so that they don't interfere with your clamp. If any of your sidewall posts aren't level, now's the time to straighten them. So this section of hip board is going to have to be cut to the appropriate length for your high tunnel. So we just want to make sure we mark it so that it's in line with your end wall and not sticking out. Once we get this marked, we can cut it off. So I like to mark all the way around for cutting. So now we're ready to cut. An angle grinder with the cutoff blade works well for this. Next, we want to make sure that we get rid of all the sharp edges and burrs from making the cut. And a sanding disc works pretty well for this, or a file. We're ready to put it on. So if your hip boards are nice and straight, we will go ahead and put a Tek screw through the pre-drilled hole on each of the top clamps. It's easiest to get the Tek screw through the top pipe strap because it's only going through 1 layer of pipe. On the bottom strap you would have to drill through the splice, which is 2 layers. So once all these screws are in, this hip board will be completed. Next, we will install the hip boards on the other side in the same way. So the baseboards are assembled and installed pretty much the same as the hip boards, only instead of 8-inch we're using the 6-inch. So we're going to use 1 bolt with a bushing in there so it doesn't crush it too much. Once again, I like to wrap these edges and add Tek screws there for extra strength. We'll be using the 1-foot splice pieces again, 8 Tek screws, 4 on each side, and attaching them the same way with 2 clamps here, 1 on the top and the bottom. So once you determine the placement of your baseboard, depending on your sidewall height, we can run a string 1/4 inch up from the baseboard, and I'll go off of that to keep everything straight. Usually the ground isn't perfectly level for your baseboards, and it's okay just to run them with the grade. They don't have to be level, but I prefer to keep them level if possible. So where the ground is high, I'm digging the baseboard in just a bit, and on the other end I'm holding it up some. Once we finish the high tunnel, we can backfill and close up any gaps. Every now and then you have a post that's a little bit out of position, like maybe it hit a stone or something as you were pounding it in. In that case, instead of trying to draw the baseboard up with the Tek screws, that results in stripping them out sometimes. It works best to take a clamp, bring it up to the post first, and then we can put these Tek screws in, and they'll hold once you remove the clamp. So the last piece of baseboard is on. Now if everything is nice and straight, once again we will put a Tek screw in one of these clamps here to keep everything from moving up or down. And then this baseboard will be complete. So with the metal hip and baseboard package, you will be receiving 4 pieces of 1.5" square tubing. And that's what we'll be using to complete the 4 corners. So once you cut this off to the right length, we will attach these L brackets on both sides here, and then we will hook it on. We want to keep it flush with the outside. And we'll use Tek screws to put this on. So that's all that takes. We will do the same on the other 3 corners. So once I'm done attaching these hip and baseboards, I like to clean out the metal filings that collect in the channel. Once you get moisture and everything in here, it kind of turns into a lot of rust. So I like to either blow or sweep those out. If you have something like a leaf blower, that does pretty well. Now on to roof bracing. So before I install my roof bracing, I like to check and make sure that these outside corner posts are still level. Sometimes when you put the outside arch on, the weight of the arch without having the W truss or braces in it tends to spread these just a little bit. So if we get these corner posts leveled now, they'll stay level after we have the roof bracing in. It shouldn't take very much. Normally this is more necessary with the 8-foot sidewalls. In this case, one side had to be pulled a little bit more than the other here. So on the side that needs more, you pull higher on the post, and the side that needs less, you put the strap a little lower. Usually you can balance them out so that they're both level. So once this is done on both ends, we will check to make sure our arches are level or straight, using a plumb line or a laser level, and we can adjust them if needed. After that, we're ready to put the roof braces in. So I have my roof bracing installed. As you can see here, on the 34-foot wide high tunnels, we have to space them out a little more, and that's to accommodate the rough purlins that are going to be going next to them. So on the 34-foot wide high tunnels, it can be a little tricky to get them to work together. So the lowest purlins usually work best to go over the roof brace, whereas the upper purlins go under the roof brace like usual. So now we're ready to finish out the purlins. So I usually put a pipe or two together here, but we don't pre-install these lower purlin pipe straps because the sidewall posts rarely stay exactly where you want them to as you pound them in. And then these arches might be offset from your clamp. And since these arches are hard to move at this point, we're just going to hold the pipe straps in place and put the Tek screws into the pre-drilled holes. Remember to add the side screw. And you want to make sure you put a Tek screw in the joints where you assemble the pipes, and you make sure you put the screw on the bottom side. I like to tape those. Then we'll continue installing pieces and finish it with the purlin end.